Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another edition of Waaaghpokeylipz Now. This is our series of Warhammer Age of Sigmar Path to Glory campaign. This is battle report number 2. It is a sacrifice scenario that is fought between my friends Grom the Paunch of the Broken Axes from the Gitmobs versus my other friend Screamo the Emo of the Crooked Moonz of the Gloomspite Gitz. So this one's going to be a goblin versus goblin fight. It is hailing back to the days of Warhammer 8th edition. We have Grom the Paunch of the Misty Mountains leading his goblins against Skarsnik the Warlord of the Eight Peaks and his night goblins. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what each of the armies is bringing for this battle report, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So with that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll. Alright, the scenario rules for this one is called the Sacrifice, or in this case, it's originally called the Sacrifice, but we call it the Sacrifice because orcs and goblins are playing in this campaign. Pretty much simple. You have two sides. You have a rescuer as well as the ritualists. The idea is supposed to be that the rescuer is trying to survive and try to keep one of their one of their hero characters, trying to save that guy from being sacrificed in a spell that's going off in the middle of the table. And at the same time, it's up to the sacrificer to kill the sacrificial victim, so that way they can, complete their spell. Pretty much how it happens is that every single turn that the villain, or the guy who's trying to do the ritual, every single turn that they have, they roll a d6. On a 1, nothing happens. On a 2 to 6, the sacrificial victim receives 1 mortal wound. At the same time, the rescuers are trying to get to the middle of the table where the set ritual is taking place, try to stop the sacrifice. If the victim dies before that happens, the attacker wins, and for the rescuer, if they stop the sacrifice in time, they win. In the end, though, rescuers do not suffer any battle shock tests because they're committed to getting this done. Plus, every single time a mortal wound is placed on on the victim, the ritual guy gets to pick a unit on the table. They get +1 to hit, wound, as well as save rolls for the rest of that turn for that chosen unit to represent that the magic is boosting them up. And that pretty much makes up the scenario rules for this one. Alright, so here's an overhead shot of the battlefield. So here's the battle plan on this one. As you can see, my friends are fighting on a 4x4 table. My friend Screamo the Emo has deployed his forces in the middle of the table, as per scenario rules. And then my friend Grom the Paunch had to roll a d6 to see where he'd end up. He rolled a 6 to end up in the bottom left-hand corner of the battlefield. As you can see, we have kind of like a little garrote village taking place in the middle of the table with some ruins. We have some forest spread throughout, as well as a watchtower in the very back. Pretty much from what my friends have told me after they got done playing this game, Grom the Paunch's plan is to charge across the battlefield as quickly as he possibly can, so that way he can stop the ritual from taking place. And my friend Screamo the Emo, his plan is to hold the center of the battlefield as long as he can, try to be offensive with his cake squigs, and then retreat if he needs to, because Skarsnik gives some bonuses for retreating units because that's his special ability for his character. So with the battle plan over with, let's go directly to the deployment phase. Alright, so starting with the Gitmobs, this is Grom the Paunch's deployment. On the left-hand side, he has put his Howlers, which is a unit of 10 Goblin Wolf Riders. Right in front of that is the Ankle Slices, which is a unit of 20 Gitmobs who are armed with javelin spears and gobbo shields. And on the right-hand side is his General, Grom the Paunch of the Misty Mountains, which is his special character. And that pretty much makes up his deployment on this one. Up next, we have the Gloomspite Gitz, led by Skarsnik, the Warlord of the Eight Peaks. My friend Screamo the Emo has deployed his forces in the middle of the table. Now, if you notice in the back there with the little spider rider on the top of that monument, that is the old terrain piece that came from the Battle of Skull Pass from the Dwarves versus Goblins box set from years back. And my friend Screamo the Emo decides to use that terrain piece to act as his Loon Shrine, I believe is what it's called. That's the little crescent moon shrine that the Gloomspite Gloomspite Gitz that they worship, and they get bonuses to that. So he decided to put that right there in the middle of the table. As you can see in the middle of the table, you have a goblin riding a white wolf. That is my friend Ground the Paunch's goblin shaman on a wolf. That guy is called Snappa the Zappa is his name, and he's the sacrificial victim on this one. Right next to him on the right hand side, that is Skarsnik and Gobla, the warlord of the 8 Peaks. That's my friend's general. Right next to him on the right hand side, you have a squig herd called them Bonebreakers, which is 10 cave squigs and 2 herders. In the middle of the location there, you have the Ludas, which is a unit of 20 Shutas, I believe that's what they're called. They're Gloomspite Gitz that fire short bows. On the left hand side is a Madcap Shaman, that is the Shrinking Shroomhead, and he is on the left hand side as well. And that pretty much makes the deployment for the Gloomspite Gitz. So with deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and my friends roll off for initiative. Alright, so that takes the top of turn number 1 for the Gloomspite Gitz. My friend Scream of the Emo managed to take the initiative on this one. In the hero phase, he does burn a command point for his general, which is Skarsnik, the Warlord of 8 Peaks. His command ability is called Warlord of the 8 Peaks, and what he does, he picks one Moon Clan Grot within a unit within 10 inches, and once he can do that, that unit can pile in and attack twice. So he decides to put that command ability on the Bonebreakers on the right-hand side, so that way his Cave Squigs can fight and pile in twice in the combat phase. At the same time, the Shrinking Shroomhead also casts a spell. He casts the spell Night Shroud onto the Ludas. So because of that, the Ludas now have a protection spell. Anybody who tries to shoot at them suffers a -1 to hit bonus. And at the same time as well, if you can see in the middle of the table there, we have a red die right next to the Snappa the Zappa. That's because Skarsnik put a mortal wound onto that guy. So because of that, he decides to put the bonuses from that sacrificial official injury. He decides to put it onto his cave squigs to give him bonuses in the combat phase. And that pretty much makes it the hero phase on this one. So in the hero phase, we go directly to the movement phase, and as you can see in this photo, not much is really happening for the most part. My friend Scream of the Emo doesn't have any real incentive to try to take the offense for most of his army. After all, he's trying to keep his forces in the back, so that way he can keep on sacrificing the Goblin Shaman on Giant Wolf. However, he does move up his Cave Squigs. He doesn't run them, he just moves them up 5 inches, and the reason why is because his guys are directly 11 inches between the Cave Squigs as well as the unit of Ankle Slices on the left-hand side, and he plans on charging those guys in the charging phase. And that pretty much makes up the movement phase on this one. Here's a close-up of the Bonebreakers, which is a pretty terrifying unit. This unit can then pile in and attack twice in the fight phase. They also have +1 to hit, +1 to wound, +1 saves for their bonuses from their sacrifice. So very, very deadly unit right over there. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. Alright, so that takes directly to the shooting as well as the charge phases. This photo is a combination of both because not really much happened during the shooting phase. My friend Scream the Emo takes his Ludas, his 15 Shutas, and opens up on the Ankle Slices. Only managed to kill one of those guys, so not much really happened there. However, in the charge phase though, we see some really dramatic movement. Originally, my friend Scream the Emo charges in with his Bonebreakers, and when he rolls his 2d6, he actually rolled a 7, so they didn't actually go anywhere. But because they have herders in this unit, the unit can reroll failed runs as well as failed charge movements. So because of that, he takes his 2d6, he picks them up, he tosses them, he actually rolls boxcars on that one. So because of that, he's able to charge across the battlefield 12 inches. Since he's only 11 inches away, he's well within reach, decides to make it all the way directly in front of the Ankle Slices. So now the Ankle Slices have to take on them Bonebreakers in the combat phase. And speaking of the combat phase, this is a photo taken directly after the combat as well as battle shock phases. Combat was an absolute slaughter over on this side of the table. As you can see, the Bonebreakers had no problem just chewing away at those poor Gitmobs, just eating those poor Ankle Slices alive. In the end, my friend Ground the Paunch loses 13 goblins out of a huge unit of 20 that ended up happening, so that was absolutely pretty devastating to see that occur. And in the return, only thing that my friend Scream the Emo lost was 1 Cave Squig is all he lost, so that was absolutely devastating. Luckily for my friend Ground the Paunch though, because he is the rescuer in this scenario, he doesn't need to take any battle shock tests at all. So because of that, that unit sticks around to fight again, and of course my friend Scream the Emo passes his battle shock test. So with the battle shock test over with, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for Ground the Paunch as well as his Gitmobs. So on the bottom of turn number 1, we go to the Gitmobs. My friend Ground the Paunch decides to spend a command point on his generals. Ground the Paunch uses his command ability Grom's Waaagh, and it's said basically how that rule works is that until the next hero phase, he can reroll all failed hit rolls as well as wound rolls for Gitmobs within 10 inches of the character during the combat phase. So that's going to be pretty important for him later on. He doesn't have any magic because his shaman right now is being sacrificed to the bad moon, so because of that we skip that part and we go directly to the movement phase. Alright, so here's a photo of the movement phase. Here's an overhead shot of it. As you can see, a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, if you're wondering what that bright green circle is on the bottom right hand corner of the screen, that is the little token icon for the bad moon. In case you're unaware how that works, what ends up happening is that the Gloomspite Gitz player chooses which corner of the battlefield the bad moon comes in, and starting on turn 2 they roll a d6. On a roll of 1 nothing happens, on a roll of 2 or higher the bad moon moves. It would move into the center of the first quarter, then moves into the center of the battlefield, and again all the way to the other side of the table until it rolls off. So I forgot to take a photo of that last time during the last moon phase. So if you're wondering what that little circle is, that's what it is. It's the bad moon icon. But back to the movement phase real quick. As you can see, my friend Ground the Paunch, he maneuvers his forces in kind of like a pincer kind of move, moving away from the cave squigs in the bottom left hand corner. On the right hand side, he moves up Ground the Paunch right in the space between the what you call it, the cave squigs, as well as that forest in the center of the screen to the right hand side there, and he also sweeps around the left hand side with his wolf riders, just kind of bypassing the cave squigs, putting themselves in a good charge distance directly to Scream of the Emo's main battle line of shootas across the battlefield in the middle of the table. And that pretty much makes the move phase on this one. Here's a close-up of the move phase for the Goblin Wolf Riders of the Howlas as well as Ground the Paunch. They're within, I think, 6 or 7 inches of charging directly into Scream of the Emo's main battle lines in the center of the table. So kudos to my buddy Ground the Paunch. At the same time, he also left behind his ankle slices to be eaten alive by the cave squigs, because he's kind of seeing that as a lost cause, and he's not going to try to save that unit at all. Instead trying to concentrate on saving his sacrificial victim. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. And in the shooting phase, my buddy Ground the Paunch takes aim with the arrows from his Goblin Wolf Riders, opens up with all 20 shots onto the Lutas. Unfortunately for him though, because of the Night Shroud spell that's on him with a -1 to hit, only 2 of those Gloomspite Gitz actually end up dying. So because of that, not as impressive as he was hoping for. But you know, every bit counts when you're trying to fight against goblins in any sense. So because of the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the charge phase. And in the charge phase, my friend Ground the Paunch decides to charge in his forces. The first one he does is a long bomb charge. I think he charges like 10 or 11 inches and breaks directly to Skarsnik and Goblis. So because of that, the 2 enemy generals are now engaged in close combat. At the same time, he also charges into Howlers, but as they go towards the Lutas there in the center of the table, my friend Scream of the Emo decides to pop his Fanatics. What ends up happening is that the 3 Fanatics in that unit end up going 3 inches before the Night Goblins, so because that, they kind of act as a speed bump, and so because that, the Wolf Riders collide directly into those guys as well. So they'll need to fight those Fanatics first before anything happens, before they can charge directly into those Night Goblins. And so with the charge phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. So starting over here on the right hand side in the combat phase, as well as the battle shock phase, not much happens between Skarsnik as well as Ground the Paunch. The fight was actually pretty lackluster. Ground the Paunch was unable to injure Skarsnik at all. At the same time, Skarsnik was only able to inflict 1 wound onto Ground the Paunch, and I believe that was because of Gobla's massive attack was ended up happening. On the other hand, however, the combat in the center though is much more dramatic. Alright, however, combat over here on the left-hand side between the Goblin Wolf Riders and the Night Goblins was much more dramatic. First of all, the Wolf Riders do lose, I believe, 2 Wolf Riders from the attacks from the Fanatics. They also managed to put a floating wound onto one of the Wolf Riders as well. However, as the Wolf Riders turn over to attack back, 4 of the Goblin Wolf Riders managed to kill off those 3 Fanatics with no problems. So because of that, those Fanatics are gone, so the Rekkas are no more. At the same time, he also kind of swoops in with the flanks with his Goblin Wolf Riders. And the reason why he's able to do that is because Goblin Wolf Riders can pile in 6 inches. So as you can see here, a couple of them kind of sweep around the flanks of where the Fanatics used to be and engage the Lutas as well. They managed to fight those guys off pretty well. By the time it was all said and done, the Goblin Wolf Riders lost 2 Goblin Wolf Riders, have 1 floating wound, and the Lutas managed to lose 5 of the Night Goblins as well, and the Wreckers also got destroyed. Now, normally when it comes to Battle Shock, these guys will need to roll off on the bravery tests, but because my friend Ground the Punch and the Gitmobs are the rescuers in this scenario, they don't have to worry about taking Battle Shock tests, so they just ignored all the wounds that they took. At the same time, my friend Scream of the Emo is also within 12 inches of his Loon Shrine, right in the middle of the battlefield, and as long as he's within 12 inches of that, he doesn't need to take any Battle Shock tests either. So because of that, both forces stand their ground, and there is no reason to lose any guys from Battle Shock tests. However, on the bottom left-hand corner of the battlefield, the combat between the Bone Breakers and the rest of the Ankle Slices go directly to my friend Scream of the Emo's favor. Those cave squigs had no problem whatsoever eating the rest of those Gabos alive, so because of that, that Gitmob unit is now destroyed. So with that over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and my friends roll off for initiative to see who'll go first. So we now are directly at the top of turn number 2, and my friend Scream of the Emo wins the roll-off. So because of that, the Gloomspite Gitz will be going again, and the first thing that he does, of course, is activate his command ability for his general. Skarsnik uses the Warlord 8 Peaks ability, so that way he can pick any Moon Clan unit within range that can pile and attack twice. He decides to use that on Skarsnik himself, so that way he can pile in and fight twice if he needs to go up against Ground the Paunch. At the same time, he also causes another mortal wound onto Snappa the Zappa, which is the Goblin Wolf, the Goblin Shaman on Wolf Rider. So because of that, guy also suffers an injury too. He also decides to take that bonus and to apply it onto the Ludus, so that way they get +1 to hit wound as well as their save rolls for this turn to represent the magical energies taking place. And that pretty much makes up the hero phase on this side. On the left-hand side, however, my buddy decides to activate the Shrink and Shroomhead by popping a Madcap Mushroom. He does take D3 mortal wounds, so he ends up taking 2 mortal wounds on his person, but because of that, he is able to cast 2 spells. So the very first spell he casts is Mystic Shield, which he puts onto the Night Goblins of the Ludas. He also casts Arcane Bolt onto Ground the Paunch, managed to put 3 mortal wounds onto Ground the Paunch as well. So because of that, he is now carrying 4 wounds for that character, and he has 2 more before that special character gets popped. And with the hero phase over with, oh, I forgot to mention it, with the hero phase over with, we also have there on the right hand side the Bad Moon. The Bad Moon also maneuvers just a little bit to be directly in the center of the quadrant of the bottom right hand corner. So with the Bad Moon being moved, as well as the hero phase done, we go directly to the Moon phase. So here's the bottom of the move phase, and in pure Night Goblin fashion, my buddy Scream of the Emo decides to retreat with all of his forces. He pulls them back right behind the Loon Shrine in the center of the battlefield. Now there's a couple reasons why he does that, and the reason why he does that is because of Skarsnik, the Warlord 8 Peaks. He has a special ability called Sneaky Schemes and Tricksy Traps. Now what happens is that when Skarsnik moves back, as well as all Moon Clan Grot units within 10 inches of him, if they retreat, they roll a d6 for every enemy unit that they're in contact with. Alright, on a roll d6 roll of 4 up, the enemy unit within 3 inches of that unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. And as you can see in this photo, a lot of guys just got popped off and got killed using that sneaky trap. It's supposed to represent the fact that Skarsnik and his troops set up some traps, they retreat real quick, anybody within contact with them, spring the traps and get hurt at the same time. Kind of cleared that whole area out. The first thing he does, of course, is kill Snappa the Zappa, which is his sacrificial victim, because that guy broke free when he was in 1 inch of Ground the Paunch. So because of that, that Goblin Shaman is now dead. At the same time, he also managed to put, I think, the last 2 remaining mortal wounds onto Ground the Paunch, so the enemy general is now dead. And I think he killed a couple of Wolf Riders as well. And to make matters worse, he also starts bringing back his Bone Breakers, so because of those cave squigs are moving as quickly as they can from the left-hand corner towards the center of the battlefield, getting ready to put some pain onto those Golden Wolf Riders. Here's a close-up of the center of the battlefield with all the Night Goblins, as well as Skarsnik, as well as the Shrink and Shroomhead retreating behind the lines of the Loon Shrine right there in the middle of the table, and also causing mortal wounds in their wake. And here's a close-up of the Goblin Wolf Riders that suffered 2 deaths from the Tricksy Traps being sprung on them as the Night Goblins retreated. And as you can see, Ground the Paunch is no longer there either because he got killed off by those traps. And finally, here's a close-up of them Bone Breakers trying to crow across the battlefield as quick as they can to engage the Goblin Wolf Riders. And that takes us directly to the end of the game because the Gloomspite Gitz automatically win. They did kill the sacrificial victim for the ritual, so because of that, the Gloomspite Gitz win, and my friend Scream of the Emo takes victory of this battle. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go directly to the after action report to the post game because this battle report is now officially over. Alright, now it's time for the post game from my buddy Grom the Paunch and the Broken Axes. Because he lost the scenario, he only earns 1 point of glory, so because of that, not much is really all that great. So he does earn 1 glory point. However, when it comes to recruitment, he decides to recruit more followers for his retinue. He decides to create a brand new unit called the War Boys, which is a unit of 10 Aurochs, and he decides to add that to the Broken Axes as well. So that pretty much makes up the post game for the Gitmobs. As for my buddy Screamo Emo, as well the Crooked Moonz, in the end he managed to net himself 3 glory points. He rolls a d3 to figure out how many glory points he gets. He rolled a 6, so because of that he earns himself 3 glory points from that. And he also decided during the recruitment phase to hire another retinue of followers, which is called the Death Creepers, which is 5 Spider Fang Spider Riders that he will be adding to his unit as well. And that pretty much makes up for this one. So this is the end of battle report number 2 of our Waaaghpokeylipz Now Path to Glory campaign. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Instagram, Google+, Facebook, as well as blogger.com for all the latest and greatest news about the hobby. That's good for this one, you guys. You guys stay classy. We will catch you guys next battle report. Peace out.